In the beginning, there was a profound silence, a stillness that stretched across the cosmos. Within this vast expanse of nothingness, a yearning stirred a deep, unquenchable desire to understand the mysteries of existence. It was a longing, felt by every human heart, a yearning to know, who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? Where am I going? These questions, so fundamental to the human experience, are not just idle curiosities. They strike at the core of existence, compelling us to seek out meaning and purpose. And as we search for answers, we are confronted with even darker, more troubling questions. Why there is so much of pain and suffering in the world? Why does evil seem to persist? And why do we often feel so lonely? These are not easy questions. They are the deep, fundamental dilemmas that challenge our understanding of life and push us towards a crossroad. These crossroads, two paths diverge before us. One path suggests that our universe and existence are mere products of a chance, a random assembly of atoms in a vast, indifferent cosmos. The other path proposes a different narrative, one that speaks of a deliberate creation, a purposeful designer who fashioned the world with intention and love. It is at this crossroad that we find ourselves faced with a choice that shapes everything we understand about life, love, pain, and purpose. And in a search for answers, we turn to the ancient stories, the sacred texts passed down through generations. Among these texts, one book stands out, a book that begins with the very dawn of time. This book is Genesis, the first book of the Torah, the Hebrew Bible. Genesis, the book of beginnings, offers profound insights into creation, purpose, and the nature of human experience. The Torah comprises of first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. It begins with Genesis, the book of beginnings, followed by Exodus, which details the birth of the nation of Israel. Leviticus outlines the laws of the nation. Numbers chronicles the wilderness wanderings, and Deuteronomy reviews these laws, reinforcing the covenant between God and His people. Genesis, with its 1,533 verses and approximately 38,262 words in the King James Version, lays the foundation for the entire biblical narrative. It is traditionally attributed to Moses and is divided into 2 main sections: the primeval history, chapters 1 to 11, and the patriarchal narratives, chapters 12 to 50. In these chapters, we find beginnings of everything: the creation of the world, the fall of humanity, the origins of sin and suffering, and the early history of humankind. Theologian John Calvin once observed, "The infinite treasures of God's wisdom are more manifest in the Genesis than any other book of the Bible. Indeed, Genesis tells us where we came from and where we are going. It reveals what God intended for us and what went wrong." The word Genesis itself means beginning or origin, and it fittingly sets the stage for the entire biblical narrative. The book of Genesis introduces the law of first mention from many foundational concepts like creation, man, woman, the Sabbath, marriage, home, childhood, sin, murder, sacrifice, grace, trade, agriculture, city life, races, languages, and the chosen people. It sets the stage for these key elements of human experience and divine interaction, establishing the fundamental principles that shape the rest of the biblical narrative. Imagine the world before time began, an infinite expanse of emptiness and chaos, and then out of that void a voice spoke, "Let there be light." It said, and light pierced the darkness. From nothingness something emerged. God began to create the heavens and the earth, the seas and the skies, the plants and the animals, each one carefully crafted, each one placed with purpose. On the 6th day God paused and said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." So God created man in His own image. In the image of God created He him. male and female, created he them. With these words, humanity was born, crafted in the image of God, a reflection of the divine, filled with dignity, purpose, and an incredible responsibility to care for the world. In that moment, as the first humans opened their eyes to the wonders of creation, we see the true intention of our existence, to embody the image of God in every action, every thought, every heartbeat. But as beautiful and perfect as this creation was, it soon faced a dark and devastating disruption. In the heart of the Garden of Eden, amidst the lush greenery and the whispering trees, there came a serpent, a creature of deceit and cunning. The serpent whispered to Eve, tempting her with the fruit from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, the one tree God had forbidden them to eat from. Drawn by the promise of wisdom and blinded by desire, Eve reached out, took the fruit and ate. She gave it to Adam and he ate too. At that moment, the perfect creation was shattered, sin entered the world, and with it came suffering, pain, and death. The image of God in humanity was marred, twisted by disobedience. God, who had walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day, now called out to them, "Where are you?" This question, filled with sorrow and belonging, was not just a query about their physical location, but a profound expression of loss, of a relationship broken. When Adam and Eve confessed their disobedience, God spoke words of consequence. To the serpent, he declared a life of enmity and defeat. To Eve, he gave the pain of childbirth and a complicated relationship with her husband. To Adam, he pronounced a life of toil and struggle, and so the world changed. It became a place of hardship where every step forward seemed to be marked by the shadow of sin. The story of Cain and Abel, the first two sons of Adam and Eve, quickly follows. Cain, driven by jealousy and anger, struck down his brother Abel in a field. When God asked him, "Where is Abel thy brother?" Cain replied, "I know not. Am I my brother's keeper?" These words, filled with defiance and denial, have echoed through the ages, challenging each one of us to consider our own responsibility for our fellow human beings. It is a question that resonates deeply within our hearts, a call to remember that we are indeed our brother's keeper. But even in the midst of sin and suffering, the story does not end. God, in His infinite mercy and grace, begins to weave a plan of redemption. As humanity's wickedness grew and spread across the earth, God decided to cleanse the world with a flood. Yet, He spared Noah, a righteous man, and his family, preserving a remnant for a new beginning. As the waters receded and the ark came to rest on solid ground, God set a rainbow in the sky, a sign of His covenant, a promise that He would never again destroy the earth with a flood. Yet, humanity in its pride and defiance soon sought to make a name for itself by building the Tower of Babel, a great tower that will reach the heavens. But God, seeing their arrogance, confused their language, scattering them across the earth, and so nations were born, each carrying within them a part of the divine image, yet each also bearing the scars of sin. In the midst of this scattering and confusion, God began to call forth a new plan of redemption through the lives of the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Abraham, called by God to leave his homeland, was promised that he would be the father of a great nation, a nation through whom all the people of the earth would be blessed. This promise, passed down to Isaac and then to Jacob, became the foundation for the people of Israel, God's chosen people. Through the twists and the turns of their lives, Abraham's tests of faith, Isaac's quiet strength, Jacob's struggles and transformations, we see the unfolding of God's plan. Each patriarch carries forward the promise, embodying God's covenant and blessings. And in the story of Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, we see a beautiful illustration of God's providence and redemption. Sold into slavery by his jealous brothers, Joseph rises to power in Egypt through his wisdom and ability to interpret dreams. When famine strikes, his brothers came to Egypt seeking food, not knowing that the brother they betrayed now holds their fate in his hands. Yet Joseph, filled with compassion and forgiveness, reveals himself to them and says, Now, therefore, be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that you sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life. In these words we see the heart of Genesis, a story not just of beginnings but of redemption. It is a story that shows us a God who, despite humanity's failures and sins, continues to work out his divine purposes. As Genesis concludes, we see a God who takes what was meant for evil and turns it into good, weaving a fabric of redemption that stretches across history. Thus, Genesis is not just about a story of individuals, it's a story of humanity, the unfolding of divine purposes in a world marked by both beauty and brokenness. It explores profound theological themes, particularly the sovereignty and providence of God. In Genesis, God is portrayed as the supreme creator and sustainer, deeply involved in human history. The concept of covenant is central, highlighting God's commitment to his people and laying the groundwork for future biblical narratives. Even in the face of human free will, with all its potential for rebellion and sin, Genesis affirms that God's plan prevails. As Joseph says to his brothers, "What you intended for evil, God intended for good." In Genesis 50 verse 20, this captures the essence of divine purposes and redemption throughout the human story.